And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside, as always, by my co-host Andrew Johnson. Johnson, we started with 12 teams in this college football playoff. The first 12-team playoff format is now down to the final two teams of this year's college football season, and it's been a wild ride to get to this national championship game. Two thrilling semifinal matchups that we had this past week. And now we know the final two teams playing in this year's national championship game, which will be taking place next Monday as of this recording on January 20th. January 14th is this recording. January 20th is the day of the national championship game. But yeah, Johnson, what a ride it's been to get to this point of the season. And for a lot of folks, maybe, definitely including you, probably including me as well, this is going to be a tough watch for this championship game.
I'm sorry, there's a championship game going on?
I think the perfect way to describe this for me as an example, when the Eagles played the Patriots in the Super Bowl, I had really no one really that I could root for. I had to unfortunately root for the Patriots, and I do not like the Patriots one bit. And I had to root for New England because I obviously was going to root for the Eagles. I think, for you and a lot of other people, it's the same scenario because these two teams have a certain aura towards them in terms of, being hated for one or the other reasons. And, like it or not, one of them is going to win a national championship this season. So only time's going to tell which one gets done.
Listen, that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah. And funny enough, it's two teams that, once this playoff format started, Johnson, they were playing in round number one. In fact, all four of the teams that we had going in the semifinal had to play in the first round of the college football playoff. So all the teams that had their bye weeks, they were already eliminated. We are down to the final four teams. And let's start off with the first matchup, which was between the 7-seeded Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the 6-seeded Penn State Nittany Lions. Early on, Johnson, let's face facts. That first half, all Penn State in this game. 10-3 Nittany Lions go into the halftime. The story of the first half, Penn State just running the ball down the throat of Notre Dame. We saw Riley Leonard get injured at one point in this game. Steve Angeli had to come in relief. Got them the only 3 points they had in the first half. So it did give Notre Dame some life going into halftime. Leonard does return for the Irish going into the second half. They are able to get the game tying touchdown in the third quarter to set this game up at a 10-10 tie going into the fourth. So what we expected this game to be, a defensive, slugfest between these two teams, was going through the first three quarters. Then the fourth quarter happened, and that's where the offenses finally broke even for these two teams. We saw Jeremiah Love get a touchdown on an insane run from it was 2 yards that he got, but it pretty much seemed like he got like 5-6 yards because of what he had to do in the play. Nick Singleton had two big rushing touchdowns as well to put Penn State up 24-17, albeit one of those rushing touchdowns came after a controversial pass interference play, which if you're actually a Notre Dame fan at the time, they were very, very furious about that call. We saw a phenomenal touchdown from Jaden Greathouse, 54 yards from Riley Leonard to tie the game at 24. And it set us up, Johnson, for a thrilling finish between these two teams. Notre Dame got stopped with under a minute left. They gave Penn State the chance to go down the field and win this game at 27-24. But unfortunately for the Nittany Lions, Drew Allen made a monster mistake through an interception in the middle of the field, gave Notre Dame the football back in prime territory. They were able to go down the field, kick the game-winning field goal from Mitch Jeter, and they go on to win this game. They win the Orange Bowl by the final of 27-24. Notre Dame goes to their first national championship game since I believe 2012 was the year when they lost to Alabama. They will have a chance to right that wrong of that season and win their first national championship. And I think it's 3 or 4 decades. I have to look at the last year they won. But nonetheless, Johnson, I know you don't want to give them their props, but Notre Dame does get the job done, and they're now 1 win away from being crowned national champions.
Yeah, 30 games below 500. I'm not having fun this college football season. Just go Irish. I don't know. Go Buckeyes. Never. Just this season sucks. I'm very Just I'm not having fun at all this college football season. I'm having a lot more fun like in week 11 when the teams I care about were doing well and we had the SEC supremacy. And now it just turns out it was the choke bowl between Penn State and Notre Dame, and is who can choke harder. And James Franklin won that game. Uh, I don't know. Just like you said, the Eagles Patriots Super Bowl for you. This is I couldn't give you an example. This would be like a Chiefs Bills Super Bowl for me. It's just like
This would be like
worse versus worse.
trying to think of a prime scenario for you. It would be. I'm trying to do a baseball reference. I think maybe that would be easier, or maybe even basketball. 'Cause you don't like this.
This was literally Warriors Cavs. When I had to watch Warriors Cavs for a couple
Yeah,
of years, it was just
yeah.
like, all right,
Okay.
like both these teams are awful. Both these guys
you-
are awful.
Because I mean, you obviously don't like LeBron. Are you like that with Steph Curry? Same? Like you don't like him like that?
You see, here's the thing. I didn't mind him until he got Kevin Durant. When he got Kevin Durant, that's what really ticked me
Okay.
off.
Okay. So it was more of KD and LeBron.
Yes. Well, no, it was
Okay.
the super team of the Warriors and then LeBron because the East was so weak. And I don't want to talk about basketball right now, but
yeah, no, I was just trying to think of a prime example for that scenario.
that's a good example. Or like what the NBA Finals last year was Celtics Mavs.
Yeah, Celtics Mavs was Celtics Warriors worse or Celtics would say?
Celtics
how about
Warriors was definitely worse.
Celtics Lakers? I think would be the prime example for you.
Yeah, like I just some
Like
two teams I don't care about.
Yeah,
Like,
it
is what it is.
But for basically any fan, I don't really like. I think I'm a little bit different with Notre Dame this year. I've always said this about Notre Dame. Let me make a quick statement about them before we move on to the next game. I don't necessarily hate the football program.
I hate the fan base.
It's more the fan base that gives me a problem.
If you went to Alabama, you have an excuse to be in Alabama. If your son went to Alabama, if your dad went to Alabama, I'm just using Alabama. Just use Alabama as college.
Yeah,
right?
I know what you're going at. Yeah.
Most Notre Dame fans don't have any affiliation with the school. Your mom didn't work there. Your dad didn't work there. You didn't go there. Your brother didn't go there. Your cousin didn't go there. You have no people like, oh, they're fighting Irish and I'm Irish. Like that doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Like my college, my alma mater does not have a college football team, so I get the pick.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. Like we don't have a college football team. You know what? If St. John's had a college football team, I'd be all over them. I'd be at every game with 300 other people there, just cheering them on, playing against probably Bryant or Wagner College. I don't know, like some team in the Northeast. Maybe LIU. That'd be their big game every year, Battle of the Belt.
LIU, God.
Listen, it's just that's how it is. It's just that it's the fan base. It's like, oh well, Notre Dame this, Notre Dame that. It's like you didn't have a 2000 SAT score, so you didn't go to Notre Dame. You went to I don't know. I don't want to like throw shade on another college right now, but you went to any other school, let's say in the ACC or the Big Ten or the SEC. And even if you're a local guy, even if you went to a non-division, non-Power 5 conference or Power 4, let's say you went to a team that still is Division 1 football, let's call it like, I don't know, Stony Brook, right? You should be a fan of Stony Brook football if you're in college, if you're a fan of college football. That should be your primary team. Or Northern Illinois, the Huskies. Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's just.
No, I know, but I think the problem with your example is like you're naming like lower tier Division 1 that's not like a
well, here's the thing. We're in the Northeast, right? So
right.
it's uncommon here. Unless you went to Rutgers, unless you went to Boston College, Cuse, or Pittsburgh, you have no excuse, right? Like there's a lot of people here that go to New York City colleges that don't have Division 1 football. I get it, but like
the biggest schools you're rooting for on the East Coast are some of this team, like in Penn State's, you can include them as well.
Penn State's a big Northeast school,
right? That's what I'm saying. Like those are the schools that if you're on the Northeast, like that's really what you're rooting for most.
I think if you're a New Yorker and you want to root for a college football team, and unless you are a direct rival, let's say if you went to, let's say Georgetown, you can't root for Syracuse. You went to St. John's, you can't root for Syracuse. You went to Providence College, Villanova, you can't root for Syracuse, right? Does that make sense?
Well,
out of all the Northeast schools, like I like Rutgers. I'm not ashamed to say that. Like if there's all these Northeast schools, I want to see Rutgers do better than anyone else. But
I think for me, it's different because this got completely off topic. But I just want to make the point before we go into the next game. For me, it was like when I grew up, I was at first a Penn State fan. Like I had people that I had family that went to Penn State. I was like, okay, Penn State, like they're cool to watch. And then obviously the stuff that happened off the field went down. So I said, okay, I'm not associating myself with that team. So I became a Syracuse fan because I had family that also went there as well. So I said, you know what, Syracuse, maybe that's a fun team to root for.
You have
And
multiple family members that went to Syracuse, though. So
right.
like that's a valid example of how you
So
should pick your fandom.
but then I went to, obviously, we were both St. John's graduates, so it's a little, I'm not a fan of them in basketball anymore, and probably for the best because they suck. But,
Good investment.
with our alma mater having a football team, I'm still rooting for their football. I'm still rooting for Q's football because that's all I have at this point. I don't have a football team. Like, I've wanted to maybe for a couple of years, maybe have a new team, but Syracuse, kind of reels me back in. They just had a phenomenal season this year, so I'm already like reeled myself back in to say, you know what, screw it. I'm a Q's fan. I don't think there's a team for me that's gonna, change my narrative. I've had people that are fans of Notre Dame say, "Join us, bro. Like, this is the time to be joining this team." And to their credit, this is probably a great time to be joining them because they're in the national championship game. But I can't jump on the bandwagon. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. I don't want to be one of those obnoxious fans. And no disrespect to them. Like, listen, you should be obnoxious. You're playing for a national championship this season. A lot of people don't like you going into this game, but hell, what do you have to lose at this point? I know it's been a long time since you've won a championship, but you're playing with house money at this rate. No one really expected you to get to the championship game. Everyone was expecting you to lose to Georgia. Everyone was expecting you to lose. That's probably choke this game against Penn State. And a lot of people, especially, are now expecting you to lose this game in the national championship game, which, Johnson, let's talk about the team that they'll be playing in the national championship game, and that is the Ohio State Buckeyes, who had a really tough outing with Texas and was pretty much, let's face facts, was a road game for the Buckeyes. This game was played in Dallas, Texas, so the Longhorns did have the home field advantage for this game. And this game really came down to Ohio State's defense really made some big plays when needed the most. Texas had a very big blunder that I might say might have been worse than the Marshawn Lynch 1 yard, not running the football in the Super Bowl play at the 1 yard line. Running a halfback toss on 2nd and goal after you had just received two pass interference calls prior to that play, and you run a halfback toss to the outside. And this Ohio State team, from top to bottom defensively, has a lot of speed. Like some of the fastest guys in the entire nation. And they lose, I think, 9 yards on the play. It furthers them back from trying to tie this game. Remember, at this point, it was 21-14 Ohio State. So Texas was a yard away from tying this game. And that play happens. 2 plays later, it's the big scoop and score from Jack Sawyer, who had a phenomenal game in this one for the Buckeyes. That scoop and score puts Ohio State up 2 touchdowns. They go on to win by 2 touchdowns, winning it by a final of 28-14. You also saw as well in the first half, Ohio State, after giving up that touchdown just before halftime, they get a screen pass from Will Howard to Trevion Henderson, a 75-yard touchdown, and another inexcusable thing for the Texans in that play because they, for some reason, blitz on the play, and they had no one back there to stop the screenplay to the outside. It was pretty much, as some people were calling it, it basically felt like it was a punt return for Ohio State or a kickoff return. And there was just no one on that side of the field. Easy score for the Buckeyes, gives them back the momentum for halftime. And as I mentioned, they get that scoop and score in the fourth quarter after Texas made that blunder on 2nd down. Ohio State will play Notre Dame in this year's national championship game. So as we mentioned, especially for you, Johnson, and for a lot of people maybe, it's a game that we really don't want to see one team come out with the victory. Unfortunately, that is going to be the case. It is the Buckeyes, and it is the Fighting Irish for this year's national championship.
I am so blessed to be living in this timeline. I can't believe out of all the games we could have had, tens of thousands of combinations, God himself has bestowed upon me this game. I'm just so blessed to be living in this lifetime.
You just hear the excitement from Johnson's voice, having to talk about this upcoming national championship.
So here's an interesting tidbit for you, though.
Yeah.
Do you know the last time and I'll make it a little bit more difficult. The last time two teams from the South, or there were no teams from the South playing in a football national championship game.
Oh, that's tough. That's tough. I immediately wanted to say Miami against Ohio State.
Miami is a Southern team.
Or that's a Southern team, right? Yeah. So hold on, I'm trying to think. Oh God.
And I'll give you one on this. A lot of teams wouldn't consider this team to be Southern, but they now play in the SEC.
So it's Texas USC?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. No, Oklahoma USC.
Oklahoma USC? What was that? What was that game?
2004.
So when Texas, you want to count Texas and
Texas
USC?
Texas is the Southern team. That's Texas is definitely the South. Like that. Oklahoma is kind of like,
right.
But yeah, I mean, it's 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
Like it's 20 years that not a team not from the South hasn't been in.
Let me point out, my geography is not great. So when I said Miami first, that was not a good start for me. That was not ideal. I was just thinking. I was literally when I was thinking about it, and you said it. I go, okay, well, let's not think of the Southeastern Conference teams.
Oh, actually, I lied. Yeah. It's actually only the second team because OSU Florida. I'm sorry, OSU Oregon in 2014. The inaugural,
which was coincidentally Ohio State's last national championship.
So it's like every 10 years this happens. Like there's not a Southern team in the championship. Happens like every 10 years. It's not a rare thing. This I couldn't even tell you. This is an all Midwest final. I don't think this has ever happened before. I don't think this has ever happened, an all Midwest final.
I couldn't even tell you if it has or not.
I don't think it's ever happened, and it definitely hasn't happened in the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you. I actually
the closest thing idea. I think you can get is Notre Dame and West Virginia, but West Virginia is not the Midwest, but that's the closest thing you could probably get.
I'll tell you right now, Midwest final. If you think this game is bad, if I had to deal with a Notre Dame West Virginia national championship, I literally don't even know. I'd have to root for Notre Dame again. That's what it comes down to. I would have to root for Notre Dame again. I can't root for West Virginia. Can't do it for multiple reasons, obviously. But yeah. The biggest question for me, Johnson, where does Texas go from here? You have any thoughts about them?
I don't know where they go from here. I think they'd have to stick with Sark, though, and trust that he writes the process. They have Arch Manning next year, so I think they'll be right in the conversation again, especially with the expanded playoffs. And I would just take a deep breath and relax right now. It's the offseason.
Has Quinn Ewers officially... I know he said he was going to. He hasn't, right?
He has not.
Do you think he wouldn't go back, right? Or... Do you think he would go?
I think there's a possibility for it. Is it going to happen? Maybe, probably not, but there's definitely a possibility.
Now, let's say if he does come back, maybe they tell him to transfer. I'm trying to think of what team would maybe would go after him. And you know what? I'm actually reading about it right now, so it's kind of funny. It's one of the teams playing in the national championship game that could be maybe a suitor for Quinn Ewers if he were to decide to come back next season.
What, Notre Dame?
Notre Dame right now seems like a team that you could look at.
It would make a lot of sense, yeah.
It would. It'd be kind of funny. It would be kind of funny because I know a certain someone that we really would probably not be happy if Quinn Ewers was his quarterback next season. But I mean, I have heard him say he was going to go to the draft, regardless of if he comes back or not to college. Or you're right. It is Arch Manning's team. We've been waiting for how long for him to be finally the guy. And I think Texas fans are hoping that he is the reason why they finally get over the hump and they can finally either get to the national championship game or just win the whole thing itself. So,
listen, this is going to be a great opportunity for Arch, and if the money is there for Quinn, he's going to stay. That's all I have to say about that.
I'll tell you right now, I think he'll get paid handsomely by some university in the NIL if he goes back to college.
If Carson Beck got all that money, he'll get more.
And I'll tell you what, if he has a really good season and he doesn't get hurt at all, and considering what the quarterback class is the year after, which is also not great. He could be a first round pick. He could very well be a first round pick. Because if you're considering guys like Drew Aller to be a first round pick next year, I think you got a good shot. I think you got a really, really good shot the following season. So I think that's something to watch for in this offseason. I don't know if he's going to necessarily declare himself for the draft just yet. So we'll have to see in the next couple of weeks what he does inside. But as we mentioned, Johnson, we're now down to the final two teams of this college football season, which means we are now down to our final mushing hour of this year's college football year. And as you mentioned, it's been a rough year for both of us in terms of picking this season. I at least, I'm happy that I got the right. I didn't want it to happen, but unfortunately, it did happen. I do have the correct pick for the championship game that I picked the week prior, and now it's down to us to decide who is going to win this national championship game upcoming on Monday night. So let's talk about this game that's going to be happening between Ohio State and Notre Dame. The Buckeyes are going to go into this game a whopping 8-point favorite. The line also seems to be going up, Jonathan. So as of now, we'll have 8, but it does seem like it's going closer to the double-digit line. So that's something to also look out forward to. But as for now, we have an 8-point favorite for Ohio State. The over/under is set at 45.5 for this game. Johnson, you can give me your pick. Who do you think wins? If you have a spread, you could tell me if you think they win. If it's Ohio State spread, then we obviously know where you're going with in terms of money line. If you think Notre Dame can keep the spread close, do you think they win, or do you think Ohio State wins regardless?
I just need to see one go through. Ohio State money line, please. I need to see one go through. Ryan Day can beat all the allegations. If he is the easiest national championship game in recent history, this should be a blowout for Ohio State. It shouldn't even be close. We'll see.
I think the narrative of this game is so funny because you're either going to have the team that lost to Northern Illinois this season, or you're going to have the team that lost to the worst Michigan team we've seen in a decade. So, regardless, one of these two teams are going to win the national title, and the other teams could be, if you're a team like Northern Illinois or Michigan, you'd be like, well, we beat the national champion, so therefore we're the national champion. So, just get ready for those narratives to happen in the next couple of days and weeks. You know what? I don't want Ohio State to win. I'm going to take Notre Dame to cover. I'm going to take them +8. I don't have confidence in it. I'm at the point where I don't even care if I have to see one through. I know my season hasn't been great in college football. I would just rather see Ohio. I just want Ohio State to lose. I don't like them. It's gotten me to the point where I'm not a fan of Notre Dame, but I'd rather see them win a national championship before Ohio State wins a national championship. So, for any of my Notre Dame fans that say that I, pile on them and say like, oh man, you are a hater of this team, you're absolutely right, but I would much rather see you win before this team in Columbus. I do not like Ohio State. They're probably my most hated team in all of college football. I think if I had to pick one team, it's them. I just don't like them. I don't know what it is. They just have that distinction of hatred that I have towards them. And I can't really explain it. So
yeah, I mean, I also hope Notre Dame wins, but it's not going to happen.
I don't have good confidence that they can win, but you know what? I've been proven wrong. Listen, remember these two teams played a 1-point game, or I think it was a one-score game, maybe not a 1-point game, the year prior. That was a thrilling game at South Bend. I know Notre Dame has been looking forward to getting revenge from that game. Obviously, a little bit of different rosters from that game, but there are still some returning players from that game from last season. So hopefully Notre Dame uses that as extra motivation, and they're able to win this game and win their first national championship, Johnson, in a long time, because they have not been national champions since 1988. That's the last time they claimed a national championship. They have some unclaimed national titles, but
claimed over West Virginia.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I would have hated myself if I had to watch that game and I had to root for one of those two teams. Hated myself. So yeah, we'll see what happens on Monday night with these two teams, and we'll see who comes out of this first 12-team playoff format as the inaugural national champion. and have really good chance to maybe potentially repeat the following year after. Any final thoughts, Johnson, before we wrap this one up?
Only that this new format is a huge success, and the committee got exactly what they wanted in this outcome for this national championship game.
I think the only thing they may have to tweak is the seating. I think if you fix the seating, I think it's fine. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, but Notre Dame is never going to want that seating to be fixed because of all the money we're going to get. So
That's fair. I mean, more comes down to like we saw teams like, and no discredit to like SMU and Boise State, but like Boise State, let's face facts, should not have been a top 4 seed. They should have been. They should have been in the playoff. I'm not saying they should not have been in the playoff, but they should not have been a team that's getting a first round bye and then they get beat down by Penn State the week after. I think they need to be one of those teams playing in the first round. Like that. That's like the example I would use. And I think everything else though they got right. Like I just would like to see them maybe seed these teams better. Maybe not go by conference championships. I think the conference championships should make a factor in terms of where you're ranked, but not in terms of seeding. If that makes sense. That's the only change I would make.
No, I would actually agree with that. That's the one thing I was going to change, and you took the words right out of my mouth. So
that's the only thing I would change. I think if you just fix the seeding of the format, I love this. I love the 12-team like format. I love it. I think because everyone was expecting a team like Oregon or Texas or Georgia to get to the national championship game, and maybe not even Ohio State and Notre Dame, because Ohio State, obviously after they lost to Michigan, everyone was down the dumps on them, and they have been the most dominant team these last 3 weeks. They've used all the momentum they've had since that Michigan game to their advantage, and now they are one step away from the national championship. And Notre Dame, people want to crap on them for not being in a conference, but hey, they've beaten some of the best teams in the nation. They've beaten two SEC. They beat in a Big Ten school, or two Big Ten schools, I should say, in this playoff. An SEC champion as well, and a chance to beat the third Big Ten school, the team that's been the hottest this entire playoff format, that everyone believes to be a juggernaut right now going in to this national championship game. So a lot to prove for both of these sides trying to win this inaugural 12-team playoff format national championship. So we'll see what happens on Monday night. But it should be a fun one. And then Johnson will go into the offseason for college football, and a lot of interesting storylines going into next season's college football year with new coaches, transfer portal, NIL, you name it. It's going to be a lot to break down the show for us next year, and we'll see if maybe they do make those changes to the college football playoff that we have been mentioning earlier on here in this show. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. We started with 12. We're now down to 2 in this year's college football season. For the 12-team playoff format is the 8-seeded Ohio State Buckeyes versus the 7-seeded Notre Dame Fighting Irish for this year's national championship game. Will be taking place in Atlanta, Georgia. Which team will come out on top as the national champions? We'll have to tune in on Monday to find out. And then next week here in the show will be our final recap of this year's college football season before we head into another offseason of college football. This has been Nicholas Avona, joined alongside by my co-host Andrew Johnson for the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week. Good luck to all of the Ohio State and Notre Dame fans for this year's national championship game.